Hi, this is Mrs. Bustamante. I want to talk about a really interesting and important and applicable to our lives type of inheritance, and that's with human blood type. Human blood type is really interesting because it involves multiple alleles, so we can have more than just one type of phenotype seen, and it involves codominance, which is pretty interesting. So let's talk about human blood types. In humans, there are actually 4 types of phenotypes that you could see as far as your blood type. You could have type A blood, type B blood, type AB blood, or type O blood. And they're actually just controlled by 3 alleles. So we can have 4 different phenotypes that are controlled by 3 alleles. That's either A, B, or O. And if you've ever heard about, like, you want to get the right type of blood, if you ever have to have a blood transfusion, it has a little bit to do with this. And that's just because different red blood cells have kind of like different puzzle pieces on the ends of them. And you need to receive the right type of blood so that it doesn't kind of attack. Your body doesn't go into a defense mechanism and try and ward off, if you will, foreign bodies that shouldn't be in there like it normally is supposed to do. So the blood type and how it's controlled has something to do with why you want to be sure that you get the right type of blood if you ever have to have a blood transfusion, for example, just as a side note. So O happens to be recessive. In order to be O blood type, you have to have 2 alleles present. And A and B, we then say, are codominant. So if you get an A allele from, say, your mom and a B allele from your dad, your blood type is AB. So we can actually have type A blood, type B blood, type AB blood, and type O blood, because remember, you'll have 2 alleles of each. So that means in order to be type A, you have to have 2 alleles of A or you can be AO. Or in order to be type B, you can be a B with another B or a B with an O, because A and B are both dominant over O. The only way to be type O blood is to have 2 O's. So a lot of times we'll show crosses involving blood type on an eye just to denote that's where the allele is. Why exactly, I'm not sure, but sometimes it looks like this. So we'll say the phenotype is the blood type that you would say you would show. And your genotype is often shown on eyes like this. And in fact, we'll do the O with a lowercase I. And then you put the letter of, say, if you're type A, as a capital letter on a capital I, just to kind of maybe hopefully make it easier to understand. I'm not sure. So how could you be O blood? Well, you have to be OO in order to be type O blood. A blood, you could be AA or you could be AO, because O is recessive to A. Type B blood, you could be BB or you could be BI, again, because O is recessive to B. But let's say you got an A and a B, then you would show AB phenotype in your blood. And this part over here I think is kind of interesting, what we touched on a second ago, that it's important if you ever have to get a blood transfusion that you get the right type of blood. And that's because otherwise your blood kind of like reacts, or your red blood cells will clump together if the wrong type is added. So you do not want to have clumping. Clumping is not what you want to see happen. So this is why we say type O blood, you can only receive blood from another O donor. O blood, however, is what we say is the universal donor. Anyone else can receive O blood. Type A blood, you'll notice it will clump when it receives either B or AB, so anything with the presence of B, but yes, they could receive O blood. And B is kind of a little bit the opposite, right? They can receive O blood and they can receive B blood, but A blood or AB blood would cause it to clump. And you'll notice that AB blood would not clump with any of the blood types given to it or exposed to it. So that's why we say AB type blood is the universal recipient. They can receive any type of blood. Now, sometimes you'll also talk about blood type as a positive or a negative, right? There is something called an Rh factor, and it's just like in this slide a little while ago, we saw some pictures of these red blood cells, and they have these little receptors on them that kind of things fit together in them like a puzzle piece. And it's just sort of like another puzzle piece on the outside of the red blood cells that is just another allele that determines your blood type. And we'll use that too in determining blood type in a little while. So I think human blood type is really interesting. It's a great example of codominance and an example of how we can use multiple alleles to give a certain phenotype.